Peace and love, y'all. Welcome to a brand called Me. I am your host, Chris Kazi Roll, and on this show, you will learn how to build your personal brand, become your best self, and make a living doing what you love. Let's get this party started. So we're back with another episode, and today we're gonna dive into the evolution of a brand called G. I want to start in the now, and then we'll go back. So today, the brand called G is here in Atlanta, and I know you was Gita Barber, but you're so much more than that today. When you meet someone new, how are you introducing yourself?
Honestly, I introduce myself as G.
Okay.
I just say I'm G, and I let who I am and what I do just unfold naturally. Typically, to be in conversation.
Gotcha. Then reveal over time.
It's like a slow reveal.
But are you not in the barbershop anymore? Because I remember when you retired, but I know when you came out here and you opened up Groomsmen. So let's talk about the businesses that you have here. What are the businesses that you're in at this time?
Okay, Groomsmen, which is a boutique barbershop in Little Five Points. We opened that in 2018.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, I was working on Miss Icy's Kitchen and Bar, which is a West Indian restaurant in North Decatur.
Good food.
Great food. Check it out.
Brunch is off the hook. Yes.
And then we also have Apartment 4B, which is a Caribbean fusion restaurant in Buckhead. Recently, we actually celebrated a year this week with the Juice Bar, More Life, Juice Co.
How does one go from being a barber to a restaurateur? How do you make that transition?
I always tell people that being in a barbershop, you have the luxury of building relationships. And so I was able to meet plenty of people, and I was also able to establish trust just by virtue of being a barber. For a man, he's second to God. God and the barber. And so I was able to establish some really firm relationships, and when opportunities presented themselves to a couple of friends that I had, they've always reached out and asked for my opinions, and then naturally collaborations came from that. I always knew that being a barber wasn't going to be my last stop. I always saw my name in lights. I saw more for myself, and it was a time back in, I think, 2010 that I decided to give up barbering. I couldn't see how I was gonna reach my goals behind the chair, and I gave it up. That was my final year, closed the books, and that was it. And I came back to it only because when I moved here to Atlanta back in 2014, I went back to what I knew and what I actually loved. And I knew that the barbershop was gonna be a space where I was gonna establish relationships in this new city. And that's exactly what happened.
Gotcha. So when you say trust, when people think of G, the barber, it's not G the barber, no?
It's still.
It's just G.
They're interchangeable.
Okay, gotcha.
They're all me.
So when people think of G, what words would come to mind? Because usually when they say a brand is not who you say you are, a brand is who others say you are.
Correct.
So when people think of G, what do you think that comes to their mind?
I think when people think about me, they naturally say that he's ahead of his time. Since I was, I want to say, 17 years old, I was a business owner, but I was also a father. I think they would totally credit me for being somebody who's forward thinking and just determined, relentless drive to be successful.
Yeah. So let's go back then. So how'd you even get to become a barber?
It's a long story.
We got time.
All right. So my story is not uncommon. I grew up in a single parent home, and my mom, she struggled with drug addiction. And because of that, she never gave me money to get a haircut, and she would try to do it herself. And I was just like, this was around the time when you had to wear a jersey. Like, this was the fades that they call fades today was called jerseys back then. And you needed a half moon in order to be relevant and for the wavy light-skinned girls to like you. But my mom, her focus was just to cut it off. Just get the P's off. It was just low, like what you wearing right now.
Okay, gotcha.
And I wasn't having it. Like even back then, I was just like, nah, that's not it.
She wasn't seeking you though.
I believe she was. If I had to think about it, I think she would have. I mean, she wasn't a focus to give me a great cut, and so I took that do-it-yourself kit and I did it myself. I went in that bathroom, little 2-3 bedroom apartment bathroom, and literally it was those clippers. It wasn't even the clippers where you have a level on the side to make adjustments. It was the ones I had to use a little knife and take the blade off for each level that I wanted. And with practice, I got good. I remember going to school, 7th grade, and my friend William King said, yo man, who cut your hair? And I was a little reluctant to answer him because I was like, why? He's like, no, it's good. That was that moment where I recognized that I was good at something, because prior to that, I struggled with insecurities naturally growing up in that space. And kids are mean, knowing what was going on in my home. So I teased, so there was a lot of insecurities around that. And I didn't necessarily know what my talents were. I was only in 7th grade. But that was that one moment where my talents, where it came out. And I was just like, all right, I'm good at something. And so I took that and I ran with it. So I continued cutting my own hair. I continued to, and then I started to cut people's hair in the neighborhood. And that's when Gita Barber was born, because I became that neighborhood barber.
Any mentors in that?
So it's funny because the reason why I believe that I was able to cut my own hair was because, like I said, Mom, she had her struggles. And because of that, my sister and I, we would be able to just roam the streets at night. Like it was, for days, we would be able to just hang out and do whatever we wanted to do. Friends would be in school preparing for the next day. But the only thing that was open and safe would be the barbershop. It was literally downstairs from my building. And so I would spend a lot of time in the barbershop when all of my friends was home, eating dinner and doing homework. I'd be sitting in the barbershop.
What area is this?
This is in East Flatbush, Brooklyn, affectionately known as the 90s.
90s,
you know? And so, yeah, I grew up on 93rd Rutland Plaza, big up. And yeah, that's why. And so I didn't know at that time how I learned. I didn't realize that I'm a visual learner, and sitting in the barbershop for hours on end, it gave me the tutelage visually to be able to be confident to even make that attempt. I was learning, but I wasn't just learning cutting hair, I was learning about life, because these barbers was in there talking that talk. They would talk about politics, talk about sex, talk about the streets, they would talk about everything, and I learned so much there. But Mr. Cherry, it was his barbershop, and he kept that door open for me. And I always credit Mr. Cherry with being very instrumental with saving my life, because he allowed me to just take refuge in his store. And when he was shooing everybody else, people couldn't sit in his barbershop. But I think he took a liking to me, and he allowed me to sit in the shop. And yeah, that was the game changer.
Nice. And was he also teaching you the business side of, was you learning it back then? That you even know that you could open a barbershop?
No, he didn't. I don't think it was intentional for him in terms of taking somebody and mentoring them.
Yeah.
I think he was just, with barbers, we lead with love. We love the people, we love the community. And I think that he had that. He was one of those old school guys that been there for 30 plus years. He was a staple in the community. And he was just an example of entrepreneurship, owning your own, because before that, it was always, you're taught to get a job, taught to go work for a company 40 years, but he was different. He owned a building across the street from the barbershop. He owned one of those buildings. And yeah, he was an example of just true entrepreneurship. So I think vicariously, and like I said, I learned visually. So if I see something,
it's possible.
Somehow, some way, it just translates into what is possible.
So let's jump to 17. How did the idea pop in your head? So was they calling you Gita Barber? Where did the name stick?
Wow. So it was a name I gave to myself.
Okay, gotcha.
And I remember always watching the barbers that were doing what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a celebrity barber. I wanted to cut artists. I wanted to go out on tour. And it was a barber in Harlem by the name of Lenny the Barber.
Lenny, I remember Lenny. Yeah.
And he because he had the Lenny the Barber attached to his name, I mimicked myself after him.
Yeah.
I just chose the name. I said, all right, you Lenny, I'm Gita Barber. It's so funny, man, because years later I actually got to meet that brother, and we super cool now.
Look at that.
I gave him his flowers and told him, I was like, yo, man, you was my inspiration, bro.
So at 17, how'd you come up with the store?
Funny story. So I was working in Canarsie, Brooklyn at Fixed Ends 2 for Steve Lindsay. He was the proprietor. He owned the barbershop. And man, Steve, he was just like, he was so mean. We would be in the barbershop working day in, day out. And he would just come in with this look on his face like he was upset with the world. And I couldn't understand why he would be so upset when he had 4 or 5 barbers in the community who was giving him 50% of their earnings. So I started calculating like, yo, if I'm doing $1,000 a week and that barber doing $2,000 a week and all of us are giving him 50%, this guy's making a lot of money. And so I started to do the math, and once I really figured it out, I looked around, I was just like, man, I know how to cut hair. I think I'm smart enough to do business. I could do this too. And that's where it started. And so I started to talk to some of my clients about my idea. Once I figured out the money part, I already determined that I'm out of here. I'm here ready to go do my own thing. So I started running it past a bunch of my clients. And one of my clients, he was down. He was like, listen, you got the idea. I got the money. Let's go for it. And so we did. This is Park Slope. This is when we opened up Future Image Barbershop. Yep. And so I always wanted to be in an area that was diverse, and around that time, Park Slope was re-emerging and went through a gentrification. Prior to that, it was a very high crime and drug infested neighborhood.
I never knew that.
Yeah, absolutely. Back in the days, and then it slowly changed and became what it is today. I spent a lot of time down there. My dad used to run a pool hall, Brownstone Billiards, and so every weekend when I would be with him, we would be there, and I would spend my weekends in the pool hall, which is why, you know, I went over there and just brought back some memories.
I gotcha.
So I always wanted to be in Parksville because I had history with the area, knew the demographics of the community, and that's what I wanted for my business.
Yeah, gotcha. And so how'd you get the word out about this? How much people do you think? 10?
My clients, I probably brought about maybe 20 clients with me. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But with barbering, it's so hard to find a good barber, and that's worldwide, right?
Yes, absolutely.
That's worldwide. It's not subject to any one area. And when you find a good barber, you stay with them. It doesn't matter how far you have to travel, because that haircut's gonna last for at least 4 days, especially because it's so much about your appearance. The way you look a lot of the time determines how you feel, and vice versa. And so I've always just been about word of mouth. Like, I built my whole life with, just like I said, relationships. So one client turned to 2 clients. That person brought their cousin. That person brought his mom's. Yeah. And before you know it, I had this extensive list of people who was just coming to check me.
Gotcha. Now, with the store, were you doing the same thing that the other Steve, you said, was doing? Was the same thing, 50% for the chair, all that? Okay.
Yeah, and it's funny because everything is about vantage point, right? Where you are on the spectrum, right? Because in the barbershop, working with Steve, I couldn't understand him. When the roles reversed,
he's like, oh.
I went to Steve immediately, man, and said, bruh, I have so much respect for you because I get it. The frustration of being an entrepreneur and relying on the people who you bring into the fold. And in the barber game, a service-based industry is so different from having an actual product that you can sell, because you're removed from the actual client, right? Like, my business is not necessarily clients. My business is barbers. I'm in the business of building barbers. When you become a barbershop owner, you no longer are in the business of servicing clients. And I think there's 2 different disciplines and skill sets. And so it took a lot. And I understood Steve a little bit more.
Gotcha. Yeah, when you coming in upset?
I wasn't coming in upset because I have different temperament. I'm a little bit more understanding of people. And plus, because I was once a barber.
Yeah.
I also had the knowledge, I had the
empathy, like
I understood the barber and how they would respond to that. I was very mindful, so I came in with grace and understanding and just love and compassion, and we built a successful business.
And I used to travel all the way over there just to get the cut. Some of the words you just said is, I would say that's the brand too.
Yeah.
Because I say confrontation, but I think it's courageous. You say love, understand, like empathy, having that empathy and leadership. When you're a leader, you come in, you just naturally lead. When was the first time you started working with anybody of that caliber?
I used to go to Skate Key up in the Bronx every week. It was either Sunday or Monday nights. I don't remember exactly. But what was it? It was Sundays? Yeah, so I would be at Skate Key every Sunday night, man. And I remember seeing Tammy Ford at Skate Key. Now, prior to Skate Key, we would be hanging out at all the clubs. And Tammy, she was a party promoter. She started out as a model, but then she transitioned and she became this socialite and then party promoter in New York City. Gotcha. And for whatever reason, we connected, we clicked. And every time we rolled up to the parties, Tammy would be like, come on, who you with? Y'all, come on. And so she always showed love. One day at Skate Key, she gave me a card. And she said, hey, this is what I'm doing now. And I was just like, cool, put the card in my pocket, thought nothing of it. One day, I was home and I had the card. I saw the card and I looked at it, and it said that she represented artists, nail techs, makeup artists, hairstylists, and groomers. Up until that point, I didn't ever consider myself a groomer. I didn't know what that was. I never heard the term except for with pets. Right. But something made me investigate that a little bit more. So I called her. We had a quick conversation. I told her, I said, hey, listen, this is what I want to do. She said, okay, you got a portfolio? I said, no. She said, well, that's the first thing we got to do. We got to get your portfolio. Maybe a week or two later, she calls me and she says, all right, you ready? I'm sending you to Chelsea Piers. We got a XXL cover with 50 Cent and Young Buck and G Unit.
That's good.
And that's how I started. Boom. Got my first job out the gate was a XXL cover with the hottest rap group.
Yo, it's possible, like you said earlier. And it's relationships too.
Yes.
You met Tammy. Tammy opened up another door, and doors keep opening, especially if you represent yourself well. So when you showed up to these gigs, besides just being a good barber, are you showing your personality, or are you just more just doing the job?
A little bit of both. I wanted to be able to show my personality, but in production, barbers, and I want to be careful how I say this, but we the help in production. We're not behind the camera. We're not directing, producing, writing. We're not valued. The stylists, the barbers, the makeup, we're the ones, they want us to show up just 5 hours before talent, sit there throughout, you know what I'm saying? But I think if that's the case, then we should be valued and paid.
Come on.
The same way. Because like we said in the beginning, your brand is perception. It's what people think of you. Yeah. And they think what they see. See is what they think. And so I would not necessarily connect with the talent. I would do my job and then fall back unless the talent was receptive and warm.
So you're just feeling them out?
It's like any relationship.
You know, see what they give and you go back and forth.
Yeah, a little small talk. Some people are more giving than others.
Gotcha. But to a young barber, you wouldn't tell a young barber, go in there and let them people do your job and feel it out.
Because it's about the cut at the end of it. Yeah. It's all about that cut.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah.
Do that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Because that cut is going to get you more gigs. It's going to get you more.
And like you said, your brand was built off of word of mouth. So if you do a good job, then word get out. Let's talk about building the brand, like expanding the brand.
Barclays Center, what we know is the Barclays Center where the Brooklyn Nets play. They came in, I think that was 2002, 2003. That's when they broke ground where that Barclays Center is now. And that kind of had a ripple effect in Park Slope. So a lot of the small businesses started to get squeezed because there was new, bigger corporations and companies coming in. And so if you weren't able to withstand what was happening in terms of the increase in real estate costs, property taxes, things like that, you found yourself on the outside looking in. Not to mention, 9/11 had just happened.
Right.
And so there was this influx of people who lived in Manhattan and surrounding areas now looking for and so naturally right across the bridge would be the next
closest you could go to work,
the next place to be. And so it was multiple reasons why that area became more and more desirable and less affordable. And I had a vision for what was possible and wanted to do something bigger. I wanted to incorporate both sexes, unisex is what we call it. I wanted to do a man and woman shop, and I wanted to blend the two. And so I started looking for a space. And I found a space on Ocean Avenue that was perfect. I remember me and a good friend of mine, Ursula Steven, we were considering doing the business together. One day we turned from Eastern Parkway on Ocean Avenue, and lo and behold, it was a space right there. It was two spaces, one on either side of the street. And it just so happened that the space across the street from where we were, the guy who was renting it, he was there. He was actually out there that day. He gave me a tour of the space, and probably about a week or two later, I rented it. I had the space. I had the keys.
Gotcha. Now, I remember coming over to that space, and then I think you was building it, and I asked you why you didn't bring in other barbers at the first, because you didn't want them to build it at the same time. We'll talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I did. I think I had a little bit of experience at that point, and I know how we are. We, especially upon inception, if we come in from the beginning and we actually build whatever it is together, I'm gonna naturally take some ownership over it. And it was probably a little bit of control on my part, but I didn't want for anyone to feel like it was theirs. Primarily because a lot of these barbershops that you go into, everybody is for themselves. All the barbers are on a rent base, so they pay their rent, but they come and they go as they want. They show up late, they might run out, go smoke some weed. And I wanted to build a business, and I wanted it to be focused on people. But when you have these individualistic mindsets, there's no way to build and really put the people first.
Yeah.
So I did all of the things that I thought I could do to maintain control over the time that the barbers came into work, how they handled the clients, how much we charged the clients, and just that overall experience.
Gotcha.
You know, because I knew it was all about them.
And were you doing my same model, Steve?
Yeah, I've always done that.
Gotcha. So you had to build it first, then they came, and then they paid basically rent. No, it isn't a rent, it's a
Commission.
So it's 50% of whatever's made, right?
Or whatever the
Agreement. So in a sense, if you break it up, we got all these Airbnbs and all this stuff. If you break it up, you could almost, that chair could have been a booth or apartment or
anything
in the commercial real estate.
Anything.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So did you see yourself as an entrepreneur when you were a barber renting a chair from Steve?
Yes, I did. I've always believed that I would be doing something for myself. My dad, he was an entrepreneur at one time. He owned the cleaners. And I remember just watching my dad do his thing. And I was like, all right. I saw my uncle sell drugs. They were working for themselves. So I was like, all right. I grew up in the hood, man. There wasn't a lot of people going to work for somebody. People was doing whatever they needed to do to survive.
So then in that entrepreneurship, you expand, you went from Future Image to Naps. You changed the brand. Why you changed the brand from Future Image to Naps?
I changed the brand because, like I said, I wanted to incorporate women, and I felt that Future Image, if it was going to be around, that it was already established as what it was. And so I knew that I needed to do something different and just put a different stamp on this new concept.
Then talk about the money of a barbershop, because most people are, or I guess in a sense, there's a unisex salon, which I guess either or. Is the money different incorporating women versus only men?
Women spend a lot more money on their hair than men do. The services cost a lot more. Men are more consistent because their hair, they want to keep their hair cut more frequently, but women spend their ticket. It's just, especially with all these different styles, like these weaves, the braids, and naps represented natural. we did a lot of natural styles. So those locks, there's the washing and styling and retwisting of the locks, dyeing, like the color, like all that stuff that is costly.
Costly.
Yeah.
So then, all right, so the numbers, the ticket went up.
Ticket went up.
Is the investment higher then?
The investment of the space.
Yeah, because you have to, because
Yes.
men, we're not doing
Yes,
that.
yes. So you need more.
You need more.
When you're doing more, you need
More
more.
water,
So
too.
you need more space.
Yeah.
Because now we're talking about dryers, we're talking about water, like you said, sinks, we're talking about product,
Yeah.
waiting, like area just to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's more cost
More
associated
costly.
with it for sure.
To me, I don't know if it happened before then, but that's when I start seeing the brand of that time go up in terms of a haircut. Because prior to that, I don't know, it might have been $10, $12. Then you was one of the first ones that I was talking $20. Because before I knew you was on No Street, I was going up to, what's that rap group? They was on, the guy, it was a rapper that, I toss it up. They owned, what's his spot name? What's the guy named that, the Panamanian guy that, he had the salon where you could go and get drinks and for the haircut. He's doing the short women's cut now. Huh? No, in Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, remember, he's doing the short cuts. He's doing the big chop for women now. We know him.
Adrian Fannis?
Adrian Fannis. Because he was at another store. Was that on Fulton?
Yes.
I forgot the name of it,
Yes.
but that was a popular spot back in the days. So I was going there before, and when I was going there, he started talking about $20 for a haircut. And I was like, $20? And it sounds simple now.
Naturally.
Yeah, that was like almost 3 times what I was paying for a haircut.
You remember Tokens
Tokens,
on the
yeah.
subway?
Yeah, it's like old school. What made you inspire you to make that jump? Because I felt like you and him was the first people I heard.
Y'all inspired me. My clients, y'all praised me. Y'all held me in high regard. Y'all elevated me, and that built my esteem. And that made me realize that I was in demand. So it was really my clients.
Gotcha.
I got to a point where I knew I was in demand, and I knew I had 24 hours in a day. My work day was probably 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours, whatever that was. And I could only do so much in that space. And at the same time, everything else was going up. Rent was going up. Childcare was going up. And everything was just going up. Once you're looking at the end of the month, you got more month at the end of your money. When you figure out what you need to do. I had to charge a little bit more.
And it made sense to me too, because I think, I'm not sure it was you or Adrian who had said this, but it was like, you can have a whole outfit. It can cost whatever the outfit costs. But if you don't have a haircut, it don't even matter what you got on. Fast forward ahead to the retirement. Because when I got the news of the retirement, I was like, what? I was selfish though. I was thinking about myself, but what made you retire?
Because I had to make a drastic change. After I retired, it was not moving my needle. It wasn't bringing me closer to where I wanted to be. And I just could not fathom how it would, standing there. And so I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew that I had whatever it takes to be okay. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to go out on a limb, I'm going to take this risk, and I'm going to make something happen.
Gotcha. Because I remember prior to that too, you were getting a lot more of celebrity gigs. Are there some that stand out to you the most? I know Masters of the Mix. And
so yeah, I was doing a lot of celebrity work, but that net 30, net 45, net 60 is a killer.
Yeah.
So I couldn't even rely on that.
Yeah, that was a good look for the
It
portfolio.
It was leverage. It was relationships,
Yeah.
and I had a good time. But that didn't sustain me. I was living on savings.
Gotcha. So then so I remember that era, I fell in love and went on a whole other journey. You made a transition to come down here to Atlanta. So when you landed here in Atlanta and trying to figure it out, you went back to barbering for a time period.
I always say people always going to return to what they know or what they love, or what's true to them. So for the barbershop, it was all three. It was true to me. It sustained me for a long period of time. It helped me become who I am, take care of my kids, and build a lifestyle that I love. I love the people. I love the camaraderie amongst men. I learned a lot, and I understood the business intuitively as well as technically. I understand the business. I did all levels. I started from the bottom. When I got to Atlanta back in 2014, I spent that first year just learning Atlanta, learning the landscape, understanding the different areas, the pockets, and literally didn't hang out, didn't do anything. I had just lost my mom in the end of 14, then had my son the beginning of 15, and was in a new city.
Right.
People say that those are like the three, and death, moving, and newborn, a new baby are in those 5.
Right.
So I had all 3 of those working at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm in the city and don't know, many people don't know what I'm gonna do. But I spent the whole year just learning the landscape of Atlanta. And by the end of 2016, I had it figured out. I said, all right, nothing else is shaking. I got these chairs that I had got from Mr. Cherry. And I'll tell you that story if you want to hear about it. But I got these chairs, and I'm going to go ahead and open up a barbershop. And that's how that worked.
Right. Now, the barbershop is very distinctive. It's beautiful, man. When I go in there, I look how you laid out everything. Aesthetically, it's a dope experience, a man's experience, and it has all the different levels you mentioned earlier in terms of you got products, you got the experience of just the man's experience. You're doing like it's a next level. The
barbershop became more of like a local hangout.
Yeah.
But prior to that, the barbershop was like the cornerstone of the community.
God.
It was a country club for men, but they got services. Like, think about Malcolm X before he was civilized.
Yeah.
He was wearing what they call it, the creamy crack. They had to wash it. Now, most barbershops have a sink where you could get your hair washed, especially if they're traditional. But the old school barbershops had the sinks right at the station. And so I wanted to mimic the traditions, but pair that with a lot of modern aesthetic. And so that's why you have the space.
Gotcha.
The way it is.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's beautiful. So do you see these spaces as an extension of yourself in some regards?
Yeah, absolutely. I pour my heart into it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I see that down to the detail of the chair. You want to talk about that, the chair and the ode to Cherry?
Oh, yeah. So, again, going back to Mr. Cherry. So when I became the neighborhood barber, everyone knew. And so Mr. Cherry was proud. I think he felt a sense of pride knowing that he was part of that journey. And when he decided to retire, he reached out and asked if I wanted his chairs. And it was a no-brainer. These chairs were like the chairs that I actually sat in coming up. And so I took the chairs, didn't know what I was going to do with them, but I knew I should own them. And so I put them in storage. But then later on, I met a guy who does restoration of antique barber chairs. And so I sent him some pictures of the barber chairs, and he's like, yeah, I can take care of that for you. I think it was at a trade show. And so I sent him pictures of the chairs. He said, yeah, I can restore these chairs for you. And so I sent those chairs to him, and he started working on them. And he restored them completely. He took them apart, stripped them. It's pimped my ride, but he pimped the barber chair.
Those joints is fire. Yeah.
So, like, he redipped the chrome. We did all the porcelain over. We upholstered all of the leather. And then I added some cherries to the back of the chair. And those were, for me, symbolic. So for me now, everybody always asks, why you put cherries on the back of your chair? It's a long story. Those cherries on the back of that chair is homage to Mr. Cherry, because like I said, I firmly believe that him opening up his doors to me was part of why I'm here, why I'm alive, because I was watching a lot of my friends like Sean T, like a lot of our friends that we grew up with, they no longer here with us. And they had similar stories where their moms were struggling and going through a lot of things and their fathers wasn't around and they're not here with us. So I salute Mr. Cherry because he gave me a safe space to be. And so those cherries represent that. It's homage to him. It also a reminder where I come from.
Gotcha. Did you ever, when you made the transition into the relationship between you and your partners in terms of the restaurants, was it connected to the barbershop in any way?
Absolutely. Anthony Weiner, he had a panel discussion in Brooklyn and he invited entrepreneurs to the discussion.
Right.
And so one of those was my partner today, Asim Walker. So that's where we met. Carl Gray invited both of us. I guess Carl Gray was politically inclined. He was connected to that campaign or whatever the initiative was that was happening. He invited myself and he invited Asim. And he was like, yo, y'all brothers, y'all both entrepreneurs, y'all need to meet. We connected there. We both ended up moving to Atlanta around the same time. We found that out later.
Crazy.
So I came in 14, he came in 13. Or the beginning of 14, but we were both here together. when I would go home, because I lived in Midtown, when I would go home off the highway, I would see this building and people out there. And one day I looked and saw the sign and it said "The Grill," like the one in New York.
Gotcha.
And so I said, yo, I was like, is that the same? I was puzzled. I didn't know. I was confused about that.
Was it the same?
I was asking myself, is that the same The Grill from New York? One day I decided to pull over, went inside, and Sam was there.
Wow.
I was like, yo, bro, what up?
Yeah.
You live? Yeah, I live here. Naturally, we exchanged contact, stayed in contact.
Did he ever come for a haircut?
The barbershop wasn't open yet.
Oh, okay, gotcha. When you did the grand opening, that's when I met him.
Yeah, he's there. He was very supportive of the whole thing.
Yeah.
The barbershop opened in 18.
Yeah.
So we had just reconnected. How him and I really connected, it was a surprise birthday party for myself that my girlfriend had put together. And she invited him. He came to the house. And I think at that time he got a feel for me.
Mm.
And when he decided that he wanted to open up a restaurant, he reached out to his network, the people that he knew. And I was one of those people.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now that's dope, man. And then
The first restaurant was Miss Icy's Kitchen and Bar.
and with that similar approach in terms of the other, like we did with this store, like because I like the design of the whole spot. Like, talk a little bit about the concept.
So Sim, affectionately known, his name is Asim Walker. He's known as Sim, so you'll hear me referring to him as Sim. He grew up in the business. His mom is the brain behind the Grill brand, which is in Manhattan, New York, and then in Atlanta. So he grew up in the business.
Mm-hmm.
He knew it intuitively, and he just had a passion for it. And so when he brought the idea of us collaborating on the Miss Icy concept, he already had it flushed out. He knew the name, which is his grandmother. Her name was Iceland Walker, but they called her Icy. And part of why we called it Miss Icy is because his belief system is that you need to insert soul into whatever it is that you're building. People are going to connect in a different way. And not only that, but you can also build upon a personality, a character. Like you could say, okay, what would Icy do? Or how would Icy house look? If she had a home today, what would it look like? And so we were able to pull from her as a human being and create the space.
Fire. Then what's the difference between, what's the soul of 4B, the next restaurant?
So like Miss Icy's is like grandma's house. Apartment 4B is like the grandkids' place. It's in Buckhead.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's swanky. It's a vibe. It's like, you leave grandma's house and you want to come over to my place.
Gotcha. What's the soul of the juice bar?
My son, mom, Trinket Lewis, we were in a relationship for quite some time, and she's a health nut. I remember when we first met, and I just was head over heels. I was open.
When did y'all meet?
We met on set, but we were all together still,
Yeah,
right? We met on set. She used the barbershop that I own, Naps, unisex salon that I own, Naps, as a backdrop to a web series that she was doing with Malik Yoba. Years later, when you got married, we ended up in the Bahamas. And I was just like, man, she, at the time, I think I was turning 35. And she was just like, we should go on a juice cleanse for 35 days leading up to your 35th birthday. And I was just like, so what does that look like? So we're not gonna eat any food. We're just gonna juice for 35 days.
Wow.
And I was just like, all right, cool. I'd be open.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
fasting, not a 5 day, 7 day, 3 day, not a day. Eating fried food, beef, pork. So she was just like, no, let's not do that. Let's not eat. Okay, cool. So we went on this cleanse, this 35-day juice cleanse, man. And that was how we bonded. We bonded over a cleanse. And after that, it was just like part of our routine. Like every so often, we would do a 7 day or a 3 day or whatever. It was all about juicing. And I had a friend, Marlon, who had owned a juice bar in Brooklyn. And I would bring Trinket to the juice bar. And so she was just enamored by it, open. I want to do it. And I always had the concept. I always knew I wanted to do a juice bar because, again, I'm a visual learner. And if I see something and I say, oh, like even walking in this space, I'm like, I want to do that. And put your money on it, it's because I'm going to do it. And it took time. We had a child, and it took time. We moved, we bought property, we did a few things. But I knew that it was something that was near and dear to her, and she wanted to open it, and so I made it happen. She came to me, she said, I found a space.
Yeah.
It was a small little spot, like on a back block.
Yeah.
And I was just like, nah, because I had the vision for what it could be. And I knew that if she would have done it there, it would have been a struggle, would have been a heavy lift because of the space. Sometimes when you walk into spaces, you don't realize what's going on in the background. Or when you see something happening, you don't realize what it took for that to happen. You don't realize that for you to get this cup of juice or of a smoothie, you don't realize how many different ingredients went into that cup. And you don't realize how much of that you need to buy in order to get good pricing. You don't realize how much storage you need to put it away. And so she didn't know that, but I did. And so I jumped in with her. I was like, all right, this is what we're gonna do.
Gotcha. So you just said something there when you transition from being a barber to owning a barbershop. You're partnering with Restaurateur, Juice Bar. Who is the brand called, given the evolution of where you are right now? Because you're more than a barber, so how do you see yourself given the things that you have transitioned into?
Not wanting to ever be where I was. And also understanding that business is business.
Facts.
It doesn't really matter the product. You could package anything and find the constituents, find your market, and there's going to be somebody that's going to want it. And I understand that.
Gotcha. So what you bring to the table is that understanding of business,
Strategy.
Strategy to make it manifest, the resources, because resources is more than financial, it's also just the intellectual property of how to bring it all together. So you have expanded beyond a barber to much more. Entrepreneur, investor. Looking back at Young G, I don't know, what are 5 things, if you knew then what you know now, and the same way Cherry imparted to you, you can look into that camera. What are 5 jewels you would give to that person who is trying to figure it out, trying to make their ideas happen and build their own brand? Was 5 tips you would give that person?
5 tips that I would give Young G? Yeah. Man, that's a good question.
Have you ever dealt with imposter syndrome?
I've heard of it.
But is this idea, because when I started doing the coaching stuff, up until I was like 30, I never thought about nothing else but being a rapper. You know what I'm saying? So then when I had to expound upon that, I think I had to break through with the whole together apart thing, that I'm a coach. But I didn't have no other identity than that. To call myself a coach, I felt like I wasn't authentic. So basically, imposter syndrome, you could be good at something, but inside you don't feel that you are deserving or that you are that, or you're skilled, and people are going to find out something. So being branded a barber all your life, and now you're transitioning into these other things, did you ever feel like, who am I to be in the restaurant business or the juice business? Or no, you never felt that way. Okay, gotcha. But you think back, because now that you are where you are, and take one.
And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because barbering happened that things don't happen to you, they happen for you.
Yeah.
This is something that was like cliche now, everybody's saying it. Thanks, Jay-Z. But it's true. But there is a part of it that I didn't choose it. I didn't choose to be a barber. I didn't make the choice. Most barbers today haven't.
Yeah.
They fell into it. It was like a necessity thing, and then you realize you can, and then you do.
Yeah.
So that's why I never saw myself as just that. Actually, it's the opposite. I knew I was much more.
Gotcha. That was just a vehicle.
That was just something that happened.
Gotcha.
The first thing I would tell Young G is listen to your parents. They know because they've been where you are. Obviously, you want to have a sense of self because everything goes forward, not backward. And so sometimes you think your parents don't know, and sometimes they don't have all the answers. But I think those foundational things, go to school. There's a reason why they tell you to go to school, even though half the stuff that you'll pick up through school you won't use in your life, but there's those intangibles that you will, right? So I would say definitely listen to your parents and the people, those of authoritative figures that love you and want the best for you. So that's 1. 2, I would say have a vision for where you see yourself. Think about 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, how you want to live, where you want to live, what kind of car you want to drive. Like all of these things, they're like mental vehicles. They propel you. I would also say, get people who are doing the thing that you want to do. Surround yourself with those people. The people that's actually doing the thing that you want to do. That not just doing it, but also who found success at it, right? People who you could point to and say, man, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. Hang around them, bug them, show up at their house, show up at their job. Don't stalk anybody, but definitely find your tribe. And four, I would say, be diligent, discipline yourself because everything is, success hinges on your ability to continue to do the thing that you want to do over an extended period of time. If water drops on a rock over an extended period of time, it's going to create a hole.
Right.
So if you keep pushing,
Bars.
you're going to find success. It's impossible for it to not happen. And the last thing I would say is just really believe in yourself. Like, that's everything, you know, because the world's going to tell you that you can't. The world's going to tell you that you're not enough, especially being a black man in America. You see what's going on, you know. The world's going to shit on you. It's going to tell you that you're not qualified. And then there's going to be people who are going to tell you the same thing. Your own people sometimes. But you got to believe in yourself. You got to believe that your dreams, that God would not give you a vision that's not possible. And that he wouldn't lead you to a place that he doesn't want you to be. So I think that those are probably what I would say to a young person.
For anybody out there that would want more information, because you have a wealth of knowledge, how would someone follow you or get in touch? Because you're not really out there on the...
Yeah, nah, you can reach me, just if you got it. I'm not too accessible.
I understand.
To everyone. I try to protect my energy.
I understand.
I like to control my environment. I got an email address.
They can come support the business, where the different businesses. If they're in Atlanta and they want a dope haircut, they can go to here.
If you're in Atlanta, you want a haircut, groomsmen. If you want a juice, more life with a Y. If you want a dime, you got Miss Icy's Kitchen and Bar, apartment 4B, and you might bump into me at any one of those places. Water my plants every day.
I haven't tried 4B. Miss Icy's brunch on a Sunday is an experience. You definitely got to experience Miss Icy's on a Sunday. But I appreciate you, brother. That was good.
Thank you, brother.